Today I'm doing chapter 6, and my husband came home a little early from work. So and he gets really loud when he starts gaming and things like that. So, anyways, I was like 3 pages in there in that book just for finishing. So I'm going to finish off chapter 5, the last 3 pages, and start chapter 6. So, let me, put this in. I brought my knitting table over here, and it actually kind of works like a desk. It's amazing. I today it was amazing. Before I start reading, I came across in the clearance aisle a $12 lamp, and it's little and it's wonderful, and it gives, like, I think I could read better because I won't be straining to see. And I didn't want one of those real big ones in my room because I thought it would crowd it up. So now I have really good reading, and then if I find, just want the dim light, I could just turn off this little one. So I was shopping a lot today. Alright. Alright, I'm gonna start over here just like a refresh on these two. And I think I read this before, but it just reminds you where we were. Sometimes I do that when I'm reading, and I do read a lot. I'm kind of, I don't know, a little a nerd sometimes. Probably all the time. I really don't do any bad things. I really don't. I'm very boring. I just work. I do too much. I love to keep busy. I love keeping up on yarn projects. I'm starting on my one yarn project, and it's going to be complicated. It's going to be like a small blanket, but it's going to be a quilted yarn blanket. So I'm making my all my own squares and everything. So I'm kind of prepping up for my next yarn project, and it's going to be a big one. So today I actually have 2 days off, so I'm gonna practice and I haven't got to getting my knitting stitches yet, but I got one crochet needle, so I'm gonna practice my crocheting and start part of the blanket, because the bottom part of my blanket's gonna be it's gonna have it's gonna be crocheted, and I'm gonna try to like study up on some different stitches of crocheting. And after that, I'm going to start it, but instead of having it stuffed and everything, since I do the yarn embroidery, I'm going to knit the top and then do the squares, because I think that would be fun. So, so it's going to be a blanket that's going to, like, I'm going to be, when I do start the blanket and study some of my stitches, I'm going to stream that while I'm doing, like, the different, making my different squares, and then I have yarn needles. So I'm going to sew them together. And it's going to be one thick blanket, one you could put in the washing machine. Because my mother in law, she brought over a blanket of somebody that passed away, and they're always these fragile blankets, and they are hand washing this and that. And I just came up the idea, if people hold on to these blankets all the time, why not get one that's more versatile? So I started like sewing with yarn. And if you sew with yarn, you're always reinforcing your stitch. And honestly, you can hand wash yarn because it's easy. You just soak it really good in a bathtub, and yarn dries within, probably, like, if it was a yarn quilt like I'm making, it honestly would probably take maybe 3 hours to properly like get really dry. But yarn really is versatile. I love yarn. Then if your washing machine goes, you could always soak that and in between going laundromat. So I figured why not try to make these blankets, and a lot of people aren't making them, so I got to figure out what crochet stitch I want in the back on the bottom half that you would snuggle with. It would have to be a really soft yarn because some of these yarns are rough. I would probably, for the top part of the blanket, I'm probably going to get like a rougher yarn, one that's not so soft, because I feel it would be better for the embroidery for the top. Because out of the two, crocheting is very practical. It's machine washable, but sometimes I feel it's not as pretty as knitting. Knitting's so intricate and it just has a life of its own. It's weird. But I think if I put the really pretty part on top, but the bottom part will be pretty, it's just going to be more uniform and not as exciting and popping out. Because when I used to go to Amish country, I used to look at these blankets, and they have the squares, and the Amish blankets are some of the best blankets you'll ever see. And they have a lot of stuff with the sewing machine, and I don't work well with sewing machines. Sometimes sewing machines I don't know, I can't figure out how to get all that in, and it's very complicated. So when I was younger, I started just doing study working with a sewing machine. I worked with yarn because you won't poke yourself. You don't have to worry about anything because I mean those needles are so dull. You don't have to worry about a lot of stuff with it. I mean, I guess if your animals got it, they could hurt themselves, but I guess it wouldn't be as detrimental as a needle. I feel like if you have animals or young kids and you have some needles, you gotta really put those up because if that could turn their trachea or something, that's gonna be something really hard to pull out. I mean, I could imagine a 2-year old getting a hold of some of your arts and crafts and having to be a needle. I mean, at least you're just dealing with taking it out of the esophagus at this point. I would think. I mean, it's horrible either way, but if it has to happen, it's better with a yarn needle. It really is. Yarn needles aren't as, and they come, you see them, like last time I streamed, I have them. They're just like about that size. But it would be easy, like they wouldn't breathe probably for a good 30 seconds, but you would still have to call 911, but you could pull it out of their throat a lot easy, and then you don't have to worry about it poking through and the internal bleeding. Because that's what you gotta worry about needles around kids and animals and stuff. It's, I mean, they're terrible. I could just think, that's probably why a lot of stray animals get sick. They probably come across people's needles because some people that do drugs are on the street. They don't care where they put their dirty needle, and a dog's coming by that got loose or whatever and eats that needle. And I guess the worst part wouldn't, I guess the germs itself would be horrible. But honestly, the fact that they're probably going to eat it and God forbid it goes in the wrong way towards your throat, they're going to choke and have eternal bleeding and they're probably going to die within a day. That's probably what these animals are, how they're dying. And it's horrible, but that could happen to humans too. So I urge you, if you're doing any arts and crafts, since I have a dog, obviously, he's all over my social media. I love my dog. That's why he got his own group on Facebook. My dog runs my house. Everything I do involves my service dog. So, but if you do have any, I have a cage. I don't really believe in caging animals for long term. Like if you got to go somewhere where your maintenance guy comes, or they're just acting crazy, and you put them in a cage for 10 minutes. But I have a bigger cage, and it's a little older cage, but it's clean. So I'll put everything that pretty much I don't want Chong to get to in there. Like I have all my art supplies in there. So that's one way of a good storage for your needles. You don't want them to get a hold of the sharp ones, but even the yarn ones would really do some damage. So you really got to watch. So, but I guess that's all I have to say about other topics. But I'm sorry to be rambling. But you always got to worry about yarn safety. But that's how I'm going to be doing another stream soon, because my needles should be here in about probably, I don't know, hopefully 3, 4 days. And I'm probably gonna start with knitting and then reteach myself crocheting. So I'm gonna separate those streams, because I feel if I when I do reading in one stream and then try to cram the yarn, I feel it's kind of confusing. It's confusing for me. I think it'd be more organized this way. So what I'm doing is prepping for. I'm gonna do separate things. I'm gonna do like this. I'm gonna probably do chapters one, consecutive, and like finish one book. And then if once I get my stuff together, about ready to start my project, I'll have that in a separate stream all by itself. And this way, if you want to go into the streams, then because I like to do a lot of stuff. I love making perfume. I love doing crystals. They're some of my favorite things to do. I love making crystal jewelry, because you go in the store and just to get a nice crystal and a nice necklace, and you're not even looking for expensive. Just like the one video I did with the netting ones, and I went on Amazon. I think I got 20 of them for, I think it was $10. But if you go in the store and put a real nice crystal in there, if you think about it, they're charging you like sometimes 20, $30. It's outrageous the prices they're charging for just trying to look a little cool, or having something nice to put on your sweater, or just something that calms you. If it's through healing stones, or just the smell of lavender, or I don't know, a blue or red crystal looked good with a lot of your outfits. Sometimes it's easy as that. And these things are so expensive. I don't understand why things have to be like this, so I just learned to make all my own stuff. And it's cheaper. And I cut out a lot of middlemans, like buying perfume, and making blankets is something that people do from time to time, or it's something you work on for 6 months or whatever. But you can technically, I do want to start too. I might like have two separate videos, like when I start making yarn curtains, because I had an idea for the yarn curtains. So I'm gonna start that, but I'll put that in a separate segment too, because this is what keeps me sane in the world, is my little projects, and I have a lot of them. After you clean your house and everything, it's life gets boring, so you got to make your own fun. When you make your own fun, honestly, it's so cheap, and then people will flock to you. Like if somebody's birthday's coming, you just make them a really nice perfume. And honestly, my perfume bottles, They only were like, I want to say with one bottle per, I was like, you look them up, it was like some, I think $10 or $6 for a bunch of really nice bottles. And you can get stuff for oils or whatever. And I got my whole Christmas list done for like $30. And it was all my friends from work. And then that's pretty good. And people liked it, and the stuff that their family gave them, they don't wear. And then the one thing, because she gave it to her daughter, this one oil I made, it was rose scented, and I thought her daughter might like it. And it's real kind of subtle. So, anyways, I gave it to her, and her daughter, I go, well, this is for your daughter, and I made her two kids' necklaces. She didn't want to take off either necklace. Out of all the stuff she got for Christmas, that's the one she uses all the time. Is the necklaces and the oil. So, you really can't go wrong in this economy and times. And they were nice. And they have really nice bottles, and you can, in quantity, you can get like I said, the fancy ones. It was like $10 for like 10 of them. They were like $1 a piece. And it's so easy to put them together. I'm going to do another segment soon on the perfume making, because it is fun. But I made so much from before in the earlier segments that I got to wear some of it. So, but I'm going to start this book now. And like I said, just I figure since now I have somewhat of a following, I usually have nobody. But now that I have somebody, you know, thank you for listening in my stream. I appreciate it. But I usually have the only people I ever have in my stream usually is on Facebook or Instagram. I have never had anybody in my stream when I'm on YouTube. So thank you. But this is what I do. I just get bored and I just make things and budget money and stuff. I have really weird hobbies. Reading's one of my hobbies. I love it. That's why I'm working on my book. I have it written and finalized. I'm just looking to probably self publish it. So I'm just, saving up money, little money here and there, and saving all my money doing things. Sometimes I could sell a couple things. So I guess that's about that. I just got so much stuff going on. I got a very busy life. Very busy. But this is actually fun and actually gives me something different than dealing with work. Work can be very stressful at times. But I'm going to start this chapter because I'll just keep going on and on. And I'm just, to my one person listening, I'm going to be more organized. I promise I will be more organized. And I have a very unorganized YouTube page. My Facebook one's very organized because I'm used to just being over there for so long, but I gotta organize it. So I have my little live streams. I have one live stream in each one because I can't figure out how to get the rest of them in there. But I'm gonna work on organizing them too. So, but thank you for listening, and we're gonna go on the last couple of pages of chapter 5 to get to chapter 6. I think I did put chapter 6. Okay. Al Capone is. Alright, hang on. Let me put this way so I can see better. I got my glasses and I can't find them. Here. Okay, here you go. The angle. This is much better. Al Capone is ordered to apologize for insulting Lena. He is also told not to seek revenge. Capone does not argue the ruling, understanding that he must obey or die. Capone also understands his new nickname, Scarface. This is the way of life within the world of organized crime. The syndicates consider themselves family units, and leaders are sought out for their wisdom in times of conflict. Capone enters this world after dropping out of school at the age of 14. He first belongs to a Brooklyn street gang named the Rippers, who mainly steal cigarettes, but soon a 25-year-old mobster named Francesco Ainul Frankie Yale takes young Capone under his wing. Yale is a criminal visionary, the first gangster to use the term "Jolt family" to describe Italian immigrants who perform acts of racketeering, extortion, and murder. He is not averse to working with local Irish gangs, knowing both will profit despite their ethnic differences. Frankie Yale, who adopted the last name to coincide with the collect, the collective theme of Harvard Inn, becomes the main influence in Al Capone's life. In 1920s, knowing that he must leave Brooklyn if he is to prosper on his own, a newly married Capone moves to Chicago with Frankie Yale's blessing. There he joins the Clismo family, along with fellow New York transplant Johnny the Fox Torrio. The Fox is the nephew of Big Jim Colosimo, who controls more than 100 brothels, staffed by sex slaves. But Jim has a problem. A gang known as the Black Hand, imported from Italy, is making extravagant extortion demands against Clismo. Big Jim assigns the Fox, knowing that a brutal enforcer is to put that to an end. At 38, Giovanni Torrio is older than Al Capone by 17 years. Born in southern Italy, he changed his name as a young man to sound more American. Torrio is a natural leader known for being strategic and cunning. However, within weeks of moving to Chicago, the Fox is clashing with his uncle Big Tim. Torrio believes that Clismo's focus on prostitution is limiting. On January 17th, 1920, a new law known as Volstead Act goes into effect. This prohibits the sale or possession of alcohol, prohibiting, as it becomes known, does not at first seem like a new revenue stream for the criminal families, or at least not to John Calismo. But the Fox sees it differently. Secretly providing a thirsty American public with alcohol has the potential to reap an enormous amount of wealth. Torrio believes that the crime syndicates are making a grave mistake if they do not participate in the new pastime of bootlegging, in which alcohol is smuggled into the country and made available for sale at highly inflated prices. So it is Johnny the Fox Torrio resorts to extreme measures. He arranges a business meeting with the Jenna crime family, on the surface an ally of Big Jim. Torrio boldly informs the Gennas of his plans to expand into bootlegging and seeks their permission to murder his uncle. The gangsters, led by six brothels as the traffic gemmas, control Little Italy, sections of Chicago, Sil- Silicon by birth. They own a federal license to manufacture industrial alcohol, along with the communication wine. This is the communion wine. This is one of the few types of spirits allowed to be legally sold in the United States. Torio's plan will expand those legal sales into bootlegging market, and the Gemma brothers quickly agree to placing a hit on Big Jim. This is not a decision made lightly. Kolisma is one of the most famous men in Chicago, well connected with politicians and celebrities. Calismo, his South Side restaurant, is routinely packed with city's wealthiest and most famous denizens. On May 11th, 1920, Big Jim Calismo enters the restaurant and is shot dead by an assailant hiding in the bathroom. There is evidence that a gunman might have been Al Capone, but to this day no one knows his identity. What is known that Johnny Clismo then becomes leader of Clismo's crime syndicate. Al Capone becomes his number two. Acting as the understudy to Fox, he is given free rein to open brothels, gambling dens, and speakeries. The secret establishes where Americans now go to drink. That's a weird name. In the in the strange turn of events, Johnny Torrio is shot four times on January 12, 1925. Torrio is sitting in his car as the murder is carried out by members of the rival Irish gang. The fox is shot in the chest, neck, right arm, and groin. But when the shooter approaches the car and places a pistol in Torio's temple to finish the job, there is no bullet in the chamber. The gunman flees, sure that he has completed the hit, but Fox lives up to his reputation and survives the assassination attempt. However, Jimmy Torrio knows his death is near, so a few weeks later, he chooses to retire from organized crime and moves back to New York City. Before Torrio leaves, he anoints Al Capone as his successor. It's good to be Scarface. Now 22 years old, the new head of what is known as Chicago Outfit controls an empire that consists of prostitution, speakeasies, illegal beavers, and race racks, bringing in hundreds and thousands of dollars a week. The new boss quickly gains weight, beefing up to 250 pounds on his 5'10" inch frame. He becomes a legal celebrity, dominating the city's criminal subculture. Capone attracts the media by issuing provocative quotes like, "You can get much farther with a kind word and a gun than you can with a kind word alone." Despite the violent imagery, many Chicagoans laugh. To the public, Capone is the mobster who travels around town in a bulletproof car, wears outlandish suits, and sports a broad fedora hat. The mob boss is also generous when it suits his purpose. giving outlandish tips to waiters, and providing clothing to the city's poor on cold winter nights. Of course, Capone's power is not built on charity. It is stark brutality that really defines him. Soon he clashes with Chicago's North Side gang and shoots their leader, Earl Haim, Wace, dead. As a result of his aggression, Al Capone lives in constant fear of his own assassination. So nobody suspected of treachery is hardly punished. At one dinner in 1925, Capone invites three men he believes are planning an act of betrayal. It is only after the unsuspecting trio eat and drink their fill that they were set upon. Their hands and legs are tied to their chairs. They quickly realize their lives are in danger. Al Capone approaches Johnny Scales, Albert Ansemi, and Joseph Hop Toad. Guanta, clutching a baseball bat, then he starts swinging. The mobster brutally slams the bat of the heads of each man, and then he works on the fingers and forearms. The bat is brought down hard on the groins of the alleged Judas. The air is rent and screams the sound of breaking bones, but Al Capone refuses to let the men die. The violence only stops when he becomes too tired to swing the bat anymore. The bodies of three gangsters are found outside Hammond, Indiana, shortly thereafter. The local coroner will state for the record that he has never seen human beings so utterly destroyed. But that is the beginning. In February 1929, Al Capone sits agitated in his Florida compound. He had just been told that a gangster under the leadership of Capone's greatest rival, George Bluggs Morin, has been plotting to kill him. So, under a bright Florida sun, Capone decides to strike first, hiring four assassins from the outside Chicago, so their identities will be unknown. Capone hatches a plan to lure the Morin gang to a local garage under the ruse of selling them top grade old log cabin whiskey for a low price. But Morin himself is also supposed to arrive at SMC Cartage Company at 10:30 a.m. to assist the seven other gang members in collecting the liquor. But Morin is running late, but perhaps because it is Valentine's Day. His tardiness will save his life. The assassins drive up to the garage in a stolen police car. Two wear law enforcement uniforms. At first, the Morin gangsters believe this to be a normal police raid, but it is not. The men are herded outside to the garage and lined up against the wall. They cannot fight back as their weapons have been confiscated. Then, using Tommy guns, a swayed off shotgun, the assassins shoot each man at least 15 times. Knowing neighbors may have heard the large thunder of machine gun fire, two killers dressed in uniforms escort the other two assassins out of the garage. As if arresting them, all four step inside the stolen police car and drive away. No one will call the police. The brutal killings become legend in Chicago and will go down in history of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Al Capone is thousands of miles away as the murders take place. but no one doubts that he is responsible because of the massive press coverage. The massacre makes Capone more famous than ever. It also marks the beginning of his downfall. In August 22nd, 1934, when inmate 85 arrives at Alcatraz, unable to convict Al Capone of the St. Valentine's massacre and other crimes, federal officials seek any means possible to putting him behind bars. In 1931, the Treasury Department under Agent Elliot Ness finally gets a Capone conviction for tax evasion. A mobster is sentenced to 11 years in prison. The first portion of his sentence is spent in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, where his opulent wealth makes it possible for him to bribe prison authorities to receive any pleasure he wants, but things are different at Alcatraz. In addition to being assaulted by James Lucas, Capone is subject to an extremely hard daily regimen. His mind soon begins to rapidly deteriorate. Finally, 5 years after his arrival at Alcatraz, Capone is released with time off for good behavior on November 16, 1939. He has the mental capacity of a 12-year-old. When the gangsters of the 1930s almost completely wiped out, J. Edgar Hoover is convinced that the new FBI has crime under control in America. However, Hoover now turns to a completely different set of law enforcement problems. As the Second World War breaks out in Europe, the FBI is mandated to keep track of possible spies from America's enemies abroad. The director takes his new task with relish. What he doesn't know is that the war mandate will soon actually help a new breed of criminal organization that will spread terror and corruption throughout America. The mafia is on its way. Well, this just gets more and more deep, doesn't it? Alright. Field Marshal Irvin Rommel is on the run. The long day of combat has been devastating. As night falls, desert winds carry the smell of death and burning German tanks. Rommel is a 51-year-old career soldier whose face is sunburned from years of desert warfare. His lips are chapped from the heat and his eyes lined from goggles that keep out the dust. The Desert Fox, as British journalists have nicknamed the Allied Army most wily adversary, is known as Nazi Germany's top field general. Rommel has known defeat before, but not like today. His army, known as the Afrika Corps, has not been defeated, it has been decimated. So that so rather than watch for total annihilation, Rommel now makes a calculation that could alter the course of World War II. His new plan is centered around military reality. Today was supposed to be a huge victory, with Rommel boldly striking at Allied troops under British Bernard Law Montgomery. That did not happen. None be known to the Desert Fox. British code breaks intercepted by battle plans at 5:36 a.m. Just 24 minutes before Rommel's troops were to launch their first bombardment. British forces were altered to his strategy. Thus, the surprise became debacle. Through 14 hours of fighting, the British were always one step ahead. More than 30,000 shells rained down on German position. Rommel began the day with 140 tanks. He has now just 52. His veteran Panzer crews lie dead and burned on the sands of North America. In addition, more than 300 German infantry have been killed, wounded, or taken prisoner by the British. Montgomery forces did not lose a single tank. Now, as night falls over the desert, a weary Rommel orders retreat. He knows that the time to flee has come. German panzer tanks and infantry carrying trucks turn north, fleeing to the coastal Mediterranean city of Gapes. The battle was lost. Rommel will later write, a great gloom settled over us. For 2 years, Irvin Rommel has controlled the war in North Africa. The Desert Fox utilized an aggressive style of tank warfare to win territory ranging from Tunisia in the west to Egypt in the east, a distance as wide as Western Europe, but then shy of taking the Egyptian capital of Cairo in July 1942. Rommel's Africa Corps was first defeated by Montgomery in British Alamein. Two or more defeat at the hands of the British soon followed. To save the lives of his men, Rommel ordered a retreat. The Africa Corps pulled back hundreds of miles of peninsula, hoping to make another stand against the British. That stand was today. All the time, the British and their Commonwealth allies been Rommel's only opponent. But now the Americans have arrived. Rommel easily overwhelmed and defeated a U.S. force 2 weeks ago at Kissarin Pass, but he knows that their best general was not in command for that battle. That this will happen again. General George S. Patton, a brilliant Tacton and America's most aggressive combat general, has just arrived in Africa to take charge of the U.S. forces. It is said that his relentless style of warfare borrows heavily from Rommel. It is a matter of time until Germany loses control of North Africa. The Desert Fox is sure of that. For the Panzermi to remain in Africa was plain suicide. He would recall the aftermath of the Meteran defeat. At 7:50 a.m. on March 9th, fewer than 48 hours after ordering his tanks to pull back, General Erwin Rommel flies to Eastern Europe to meet with German leader Adolf Hitler. American Commander Dwight Eisenhower will later write in this transitory moment, accusing Rommel of foreseeing the inevitable and desiring to save his own skin. But to Rommel, this departure is not permanent. He is the favored general. No other man can deliver the hard news that the war in North Africa was irreversibly lost. He plans to return to Africa, but not until his message is delivered in person. Hitler and Rommel meet at the Werewolf. Hitler's command post is in the Ukraine, where the Russian front is the scene of bitter and unrelentless fighting. The fighters' forest compound, no, the forest compound is built of thick, reinforced concrete. Snow still covers the ground. Coming directly from the dry heat of Africa, Rommel's sunburn looks dramatically out of place. He shivers despite his greatcoat. But the strategic discussion can begin. Hitler presents Rommel with a diamond studded Knight's Cross, making the general the only sixth man in the history of the Third Reich to receive such an honor. Despite the lavish award, Rommel does not forget why he has made this journey to a cold, remote Ukrainian woods. As the two men sit down to tea, the Desert Fox outlines the hopeless situation in Africa. The tactically brilliant Rommel agrees that rather than lose the valuable veteran troops to death or imprisonment, they should be moved from Africa to Fortress Europe. Sicily is their most logical destination. That island off of the south coast of Italy is the closest portion of Europe to the African mainland. It is just a few hundred miles from Tunis to the Sicilian capital of Palermo. Logically, such a evacuation is daunting but vital to the future success of the German army. Rommel plans to begin immediate troop transport, leaving the tanks and other vehicles behind. Yeah. Adolf Hitler will not hear of it. He was not receptive to any of the arguments about Tunisia and seemed to dismiss them by saying I had become a pessimist. Rommel will write to his wife Lucia. He simply could not see what was happening in Tunisia. Rommel never returns to Africa, but his predictions soon turn all turn all too true. Just in 2 weeks after meeting with Hitler, U.S. forces under General George S. Patton rout German tank to the Battle of El Guatar. This marks the first time American forces defeat the Afrika Corps, but for Patton, this is not enough. He longs to defeat the famous Desert Fox and is severely disappointed to learn that Rommel is not present in the field of battle. As Rommel had predicted, El Water is the death knell for German forces in Africa. They surrender to the Allies on March 13th, 1943. I'm going sideways now. I'm sorry. I got I have this at the craft table, and it's the foam table. Okay. As Rommel has predicted, Algitar is the death knell for German forces in Africa. They surrendered to the Allies on May 13th, 1943. The Third Reich has lost thousands of men forever. As operations in North Africa come to an end, Allied war planners shift from their focus to the next step in the Allied fight to end the Nazi stronghold in Europe, Sicily. The invasion is codenamed Operation Husky. Sicily is the largest island in the Mediterranean Sea, occupied over the centuries by Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Normans, Vandals, Sicilians. Locals have survived this history of intrusion and subjection by forming an extremely tight knit society. Outsiders are not welcome. The warm climate of simple archaeological lifestyle is the island hides. The fact that their daily life in Sicily known to anybody but those who actually live there. Thus, Allied war planners don't have a grasp of the situation in Sicily, which is just 10 miles off Italy's southern coast. They do not know that Sicily has been occupied by the Italian fascist military regime for almost 20 years. A handful of units from the German Afrika Corps have successfully managed to escape Tunisia, meaning that more than 200,000 German and Italian troops now await on the Allied track. They are entrenched in mountainous volcanic terrain that favors a defensive strategy. For Operation Husky to succeed, British and American troops must have help on the ground. They require individuals with insider knowledge capable of sharing not only possible invasion routes, but also the most efficient local routes. Size of the enemy troop, strength, and location of gun implements. They need the mafia. Alright, I'm gonna hit this a couple times and move on here. I'm trying to make sure I finish this before the husband gets home. Or 7:19. Alright, I'm gonna put that there. Anyways, but the feared Italian gangsters have largely moved to New York City. The exodus began shortly after May 1924, spun on Italy's fascist prime minister Benito Mussolini. Oh, he's exciting. Is small, balding man with a penchant for historians. Mussolini is determined to control Italy by using totalitarian methods and brutally stamps out all opposition on the island of Sicily. This means getting rid of the mafia. In the Eddie, the etymology of mafia is unknown, with some believing the term has its roots in 1863, plain known as Mafia della Ferrero, about a group of prisoners demanding respect. Others believe it is to be a acronym for Marzi alla Franza Italia Adela, and that means death to the French in Italy's cry. After the French invasion of Sicily in 1282, still others believe it seems from the Sicilian adjective, I don't know what that is. It means bold behavior. Okay, so I'm going to have to do this. Mafanzi. I think it's Mafanzi. It's called Mafanzi. An Italian term means someone who asks for favors, but through the century, those favors all often evolved into criminal acts on the island of Sicily. Gangs coerced poor people in a variety of ways. For example, the simple act of seeing a doctor may involve a small payment to local mafia chieftain. If a Sicilian wanted a job, wanted his daughter to be married, or wanted a new mule for the fields, the mafia often got a taste. Sicilian businesses were forced to pay for protection money to ensure that customers could visit their shops. Those who do not let me make this so I can see my book better. Pay for beaten are beating are they're beating them, sometimes killed. But a strict rule of silence, known as amare, means the people of Sicily do not speak against predatory behavior. Anyone who defied amare was in grave danger, subject to immediate execution. The director Mussolini vows to stop the mafia oppression, but Sicily defies him, and Mussolini backs off. This does not sit well with some fascist leaders. If we want to save Sicily, we must destroy the mafia. One top fascist militant writes in April 1923, the following year, Mussolini demonstrates a show of force to remind the mafia that he is in charge. He travels to Sicily aboard the battleship of Dante Affligori, I think, in the skies above. Italian fighter aircraft circle. Submarines prowl in the dark. Mediterranean waters all around. Benito Mussolini steps ashore, guarded by intimidating bodyguards. He visits the small town of Piana, where its mayor, Don Francesco Cuscia, actually sneers at Deuce's men. In addition to running down the town, Cuscia is a member of the mafia. He says to Mussolini, "You are with me. You are under my protection. What do you need those guys for?" The director is taken aback but says nothing. However, he will never forget the incident. It begins referring to Cuscia, that unspeakable mayor. Don Cuscia is certainly disrespectful, using his powers to great advantage. The Mafioso chief ensures that the village square is all but empty when Mussolini finally stands to speak. The only citizens of Gracie in attendance are 20 derelicts and fools, all handpicked by Gusea to express disdain for Mussolini. A few days later, as director continues his tour of Sicily, he is once again reminding of the lack of respect when mafia conspires to steal his hat. So it is that Benito Mussolini declares war on Sicilian mafia. Upon his return to Rome, the furious and humiliated prime minister grants sweeping powers to a special police force led by Cesare Mori, a thick-set northern Italian known for his active disdain for organized crime. Working with his own team of special agents, Mori rounds up mafia by the hundreds. His tactics are simple: surround a village, block off all roads, then his police move in and arrest the gangsters. Should the suspect flee, Maury's men begin shooting mafia owned cattle one by one. Threatened with this loss of income, many mafia eventually come out and surrender. One in Maury's custody, suspects are tortured in a most medieval fashion, their bodies shocked by electrical wires, burned with flames, flayed with cattle whips, and their bones pulled from the sockets, while being stretched on the rack, all in an effort for the prosecutor to obtain names and information to further his manhunt. The collapse of the Sicilian mafia is almost immediate. Mayor Cusia and more of 1,200 men are arrested. City of Palmyra, the scene of 224 members in 1923, is pacified. Within 5 years, murder dropped to 23. Five murders dropped to just 23. Quickly, many mafia chieftains sailed to America seeking asylum. They declare themselves refugees from fascism. This please allow Malfanze to circumvent to Immigration Act of 1924, which caps the number of foreign nationals into America at 150,000 per year, as the immigrants are refugees. U.S. officials do not inquire about backgrounds of the Sicilians or their intended line of work. America has 20 ports of every in 1920s, but the Sicilians are not interested in places like Galveston's or New Orleans. Instead, they sought a light in New York City. Thereafter, processing an Ella Island in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, they are free to enter the city without restriction. New York City's population is almost 7 million people, is nearly twice that of the entire island of Sicily, and it offers an exponential increase in ways of making money illegally to extortion, protection, and other forms of racketeering. The Sicilian mafia is now adds bottlenegging, prostitution, and control of waterfront unions. And always there is Amari, the code of silence, meaning certain death for anyone speaking against the mafia, thus ensuring its ability to grow and corrupt their environment. Made with the few criminals left in the island of Sicily, they will be helpful in defeating the fascist Italian army and their German allies. They will carry messages, they will destroy installations, and they will even kill on behalf of the Allies. As for the Mafia, Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler are far worse to the Americans or the British And for their help, the gangsters of Sicily will soon reap a huge reward. Look at that. How things just reverse. Life is a funny thing. But I'm gonna end this because I'm done with chapter 6. So, chapter 7 is tomorrow. So, I will be in tomorrow, probably in the evening. I don't know, maybe early, I don't know. I might try to do a couple. I'm trying to finish this book up. There's a lot of chapters. Let me see here. Postscript. It's a very complicated little book. I'm going to try to finish this up. There's a lot of chapters, so I can start something new. So if you missed the one, I'm going to release my couple of my private ones because I guess get lazy. I like to put them out one at a time. I feel that's better for me. So because I don't like to crowd up the space on Facebook, that's a big thing. You don't want to crowd up space. So I'm trying not to crowd out space and just do one at a time so people aren't just, it's all in your face. So I will be on tomorrow. Probably I'm going to try to, definitely in the evening, but I'm going to try in the morning too. So, and I hope everyone is having a great day. And thank you for listening. And I'm just going to go and close up and wait for the husband. Alright, I'm going to do this because I think it looks more professional. And good night, and I don't know, sleep well and be safe.